Trump administration seized an oil tank from Venezuela, right, in the coast of Venezuela, right? Before that, Russia sent a submarine. Now, keep in mind, Russia has the most powerful submarines on Earth. Even the US cannot compete. So they sent a submarine in the coast of Venezuela. This is just a few days ago. How did we go from fighting drugs to stealing an oil tank, right? All this time, they have been telling us that the Trump administration is fighting, right, drug cartels in the Maduro's government. In fact, the whole countries are drug dealers. Basically, that's what they've been telling us. And that is the reason why they, rushed all these equipment, right, from ships to planes to military exercise, all of that for drugs. For drugs, that's it. Now, keep in mind, Mexico, is the closest country in Latin America and is bringing more drugs from Mexico to the United States. But for some reason, Venezuela is special. I don't know the type of drugs that Venezuela is selling, but for some reason, their drugs are so bad, right, that even though the numbers are low, according to investigation and reports and all of that, right? Even a baby who was born yesterday can agree that there is no way possible that there can be tons of drug coming out of Venezuela to the United States. That's impossible. Now, at first I thought that they were going to bomb the oil tank because, of course, this is bigger than the small boats that they've been bombing. If they can see a whole lot of drugs in small boats, right, you can definitely see containers of drugs in a big tank. So I thought they were just going to bomb it. But for some reason, right, they decide to so-called seize the oil tank. I told you here before that the reason why the U.S. was going to, Venezuela was for oil. He's killing, people and small boats that are supposed to have drugs because, the easiest things for a military to do is to seize those small boats and prove to us that there are drugs in those boats. But no. Instead, they decide to seize, right, a big oil tank and then say that they will keep it. And that proves to all of us that this entire thing had nothing to do with drugs. In fact, Donald Trump is saying that they will, seize more oil tankers. I think everybody has agreed now that, a multipolar world is inevitable. That's a fact. And in this world, the way that it is designed is Russia, China, and United States. And each one of them will basically share their part of the world. Basically, they will take the world, cut it in three parts. The United States takes its parts, China, and then Russia. And lately, you've heard Trump talking about removing troops out of Europe. Basically, the United States is deciding that they can no longer be influential in other parts of the world and that they should focus on their sphere of influence, which is, South America, North America. And there are some countries that have always been a problem, right? You have Cuba, Venezuela, and now you have Colombia, who's, going head to head with President Trump. And so this whole thing, right, of them, going after Venezuela is for two reasons. Number one, they're looking for leverage, right? Venezuela is supposed to have the biggest oil reserve, and they have good oil, right? And so, their oil is not too heavy. And the United States wants that oil so that they can sell it to Europe because India and China are making a lot of money selling oil, right? Russian oil to Europe. And since Europe is making the decision that they no longer want Russian oil, which is just bluff, right? This generation of EU leaders will go, and then a new generation will come. And so since they're deciding, well, they don't want, Russian oil, the US wants to focus on selling them oil. But they don't have enough because, they consume a lot of oil, and their oil is not as good as Venezuela's oil. So having Venezuela, taking over Venezuela is very important for them. Number one, of course, for stealing their oil, just like what they're doing now, right? And the second reason is because they know that China and Russia are now major superpower who are operating all over the world. They are going to do what the United States usually does, where it's like, look, we'll go everywhere. So they want to be able to secure South America as their sphere of influence so that China and Russia would not come there. Because they know that they're going to lose in Asia. They are going to move out of Asia. In fact, Donald Trump has already been sending messages to Taiwan that, look, we're not going to be able to help you. Right? So people know that they are going to move. NATO and the EU will completely dissolve. It will be non-existent after the conflict of Ukraine. Right? And so the US is really trying to focus itself on places where they can go. But the problem here is that Russia is now in South America. Right? And they are determined to stay there because the US is involved in Europe, in their borders. Because Russia is there, like I told you before, the US cannot invade Venezuela. There will be a lot of casualty on the side of the US if that happens. Because Russia is waiting for the US to try. For all of the Russians who died in Ukraine, Russia will make sure that they pay the US back if they were to try it in Venezuela. And that's why that submarine is in Venezuela. You have Russian personnel there. You don't have a lot of soldiers. You only have instructors, senior soldiers there who will train the Venezuelan how to respond in case Donald Trump wants to try something like that. Right? And so Donald Trump is doing this now because he has no leverage. He has no power. He cannot do anything. If he was going to invade, that would have happened already. Talk about Venezuela's days are numbered. And even when he says that, you can tell that he cannot do anything. He's frustrated. He knows that he is losing Venezuela. It isn't that just Venezuela. The US is going to lose most of South America. But when this Ukraine conflict ends, and Russia and China going to South America is to send a message directly to the United States that, look, we are here. The same way that you are in Asia, the same way that you went in Eastern Europe, right, to try to drag Georgia and Ukraine into NATO, the same way that we are going to be in South America. That way, the US will think twice before they intervene in Europe. So this entire thing about seizing, Venezuela oil and all that stuff is a sign of desperation. They claim that they're going to do it again. But trust me, this is not the 1990s. Venezuela and Russia and Iran will find a solution to that. So the US is not going to try this too many times. Because if there's no response, then they think they can get away with it. For those of you who still think that the US is fighting drugs in Venezuela, go ahead and tell us. Show us where did they find the drug in that oil tank. The problem with you who are supporting the US is that I know it hurts to see that your master is in decline. But let me tell you this. Hypocrisy is not going to save you on this. You will either admit what is wrong or you will keep quiet.